consumed annually. Alarmingly, the ocean's ultimate destination for this waste having an impact on marine life, not only in the UAE, but throughout the Gulf as well. As a fan of sustainable narrative, my goal on the World Ocean Day is to inspire individuals and businesses to educate themselves about plastic waste, marine conservation programs, and using this ecosystem for a greener future. It's time to take action and be part of the change.
Hi, my name is Diana Denke. I'm the co-founder of Fair Carbon based in Switzerland. Did you know coastal and marine ecosystems such as mangroves, salt marshes and seagrass are true climate and nature champions? They are crucial for our planet's health. They are major carbon sinks, providing for half of the carbon stored in ocean sediments annually. They provide the coast from storms, increasing the resilience of local communities, and they provide nursing habitats for many marine animals. Yet, with a third of their area already lost, these ecosystems are under threat and we must act now. Our vision at Fair Carbon is to protect and restore these precious blue carbon ecosystems. Want to find out more? Visit faircarbon.org.
Hi, I'm Gina Panayotou, the founder and CEO of Oceans Arena based in London. I work in the shipping industry, and shipping is actually the major user of the oceans, right? It's responsible for 80% of the goods that come to us. They come to us by ship. So it's quite important for us as an industry to be using the oceans as sustainably as possible. In fact, there are already more than 50 treaties in place and regulations, regulatory documents which govern how we use the oceans by the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, such as underwater noise pollution, prevention of pollution by ships, and waste management, of course. But there's much more that can be done through innovation, even more policy, research and development. You can find all the info on the existing regulation on the IMO website, imo.org. And happy World Oceans Day to everybody. Let's all do a little bit in keeping our oceans healthy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Deborah Brosnan, marine scientist, co-founder of Ocean Shot. Every year, our oceans have been getting hotter, and that puts ecosystems like coral reefs and the millions of people who depend on them at risk. Why? Because reef structures break 97% of a wave's energy, meaning they can mitigate against sea level rise, against storm surge inundation, they can protect properties and keep sand on the beach. But coral reefs also support 25% of all marine biodiversity, making them important for biodiversity, for fisheries, for tourism, and for humans. It's why I founded Ocean Shot, one solution to climate change. Ocean Shot focuses on building and mimicking the structure of a coral reef. Join us, be part of the solution.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural World Oceans Day Summit. It is incredible to convene ocean newbies to experts from all parts of the world. Looking to the pole to the right, we have folks from North America, Europe, Asia, and almost all continents. My name is Michelle. I'm the MC and host today, and I'm the founder of Women in Climate. For those of you who are new to Women in Climate, we are a grassroots nonprofit that started in New York City. Stephanie Corbally, our community builder, and myself were looking to meet like-minded women professionals interested in reducing our impact on the planet. And we found that and so much more. Women in Climate has become a global organization hosting events around the world, from the Green Hydrogen Summit in Oman to COP28 in Dubai. We've spoken at Bloomberg, and we are home to the Women in Climate speaker database, representing over 1,000 women around the world. We love more ocean speakers, so please click on the link below to learn more and create your free profile. This event is extremely important personally and on a global scale. I had the honor of attending Monaco Ocean Week this year in March and was inspired by the community and the number of incredible women leaders in the space. I come from a background in tech where oceans are not a common topic, but a focus on ocean is also not commonplace within the climate industry. Getting the word out on ocean repair and protection to the masses is imperative. Returning from Monaco Ocean Week, I knew the timing was right and that Women in Climate would be the perfect platform to raise awareness and accelerate action. Today, you will hear from 23 incredible women that will impart knowledge and inspire action. Our program is packed with amazing content from presentations on sea ice, the polar vortex, ocean acidity, to panels on deep sea mining, small island developing states, marine carbon dioxide removal, fashion, and more. Special thank you to Ali Rose and Emily McGlone, who served as advisors for the summit, Natasha Lekwa and Kelsey Spiel, who produced the event. To all the speakers today, a big thank you with special mention to our keynote, Daniela Fernandez, our Ocean Voice speakers, and be sure to stay through to the end to hear from Runa Ray on our fashion panel, who has designed for guests of the Met Gala and Grammys. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Aubrey Paris, Senior Policy Advisor for Gender, Climate Change, and Innovation at the U.S. Department of State. Let's hear from Audrey.
I'm delighted to join you today to kick off this global summit in honor of World Oceans Day. As a senior policy advisor for gender and climate change at the U.S. Department of State, I'm frequently tasked with making the case for how women, climate change, and oceans are connected. While publics increasingly understand how the ocean is affected by our climate, far fewer people comprehend the role of the ocean and its ecosystems in combating climate change. Unfortunately, the case is similar when considering the gender-climate nexus. Women are disproportionately affected by climate impacts, while their expertise is often missing from climate decision-making spaces. Awareness of these realities remains shockingly low. And yet somehow it may be the intersection of women and oceans where public awareness is lowest of all. Globally, women's roles in ocean industries tend to be invisible and underappreciated. But as the majority of those working in post-harvest fisheries jobs, for instance, women are the ones identifying when a fish stock is suffering from environmental degradation. The same is the case for women and girls informally managing all sorts of natural resources, ranging from fish to firewood to freshwater. Put simply, we cannot address our climate and environmental challenges without them. So I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the women and girls who are leading the way in climate and ocean action. They're all around us, guiding civil society organizations, launching entrepreneurial endeavors, and despite innumerable barriers, serving as climate decision makers. As you meet some of these women, Daniela Fernandez and the full cadre of today's impressive speakers, I hope you'll not only soak in their insights, but that you'll consider ways in which to partner with them. After all, it is common knowledge that we cannot solve the climate crisis alone. But we cannot achieve gender equality in the context of climate action without banding together either. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey, for sharing your powerful words and making the connection on the role of women leadership and partnership, and most importantly, the urgent need to bring awareness to our oceans. Next, I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Daniela Fernandez. Daniela is the founder of the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. She is a visionary nonprofit leader and social entrepreneur who has made it her life's mission to restore the health of the ocean. Let's bring Daniela onto the stage.
Thank you so much for the incredible honor of being the keynote speaker at this incredible event that I am sure will empower so many women in climate and in ocean. I started my journey when I was just 19 years old. I was a student at Georgetown University. Today, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, the organization I founded, has built the world's largest network of young ocean leaders. We fund, we support, young people all over the world that have grassroots or for-profit ocean solutions. I want to dedicate this speech to all of the young girls and women out there who have dedicated their lives to protect and restore the health of our ocean and planet. Today, I want to share with you 3 guiding principles that I hope will inspire you and help you think differently about how you approach your own ideas, project solutions moving forward. The first will be, don't allow anyone to impose limits on your dreams. The equation you should adopt is the following. First, have a clear vision of the end result of what you want to achieve. Take into consideration your talent, your imagination, and your desire for what you want this world to look like. Don't fixate on what you don't have or how the world currently is. Focus on what you know in your heart and your mind that you can accomplish. Now, work backwards. Invest in developing yourself as a leader, as a lifelong learner, and as a speaker. You are the conduit for your vision. So spend the time getting to know yourself and work on improving in the areas where you need to grow. The next part of the equation is building community. Surround yourself with people who share your vision. Get them excited about the possibilities and find a way to work together. I firmly believe that every single woman in this space needs to have a mentee, someone they are mentoring, and needs to have a mentor, someone who has their back. We as a gender have a lot of catching up to do. And the only way we're going to achieve parity is if we uplift each other. Going back to the equation, next is to attract resources, funding, visibility, knowledge, everything that you need to make your vision come to life. Believe it or not, this will be the easiest to attain once you have accomplished the other aspects of the equation. When I started SOA as a student club in my dorm room, I was told by so many people that I was crazy, that it wasn't possible, that it would prove too difficult, that I needed to grow up and make money to give it to an environmental cause in the future. But I didn't let anyone deter me from accomplishing my vision, which was to build a movement of young people globally who are building solutions for our ocean and our planet. So, to recap the equation, you have vision equals self plus community plus resources. Now, the second guiding principle I want to share with you, and just to warn you, this isn't going to be easy to listen to. The ocean and the planet need you to be more courageous. The definition of courage, at least the way I live by, is being scared and uncomfortable. But regardless of the uncertainty, the risk you might be taking that leap of faith because our planet needs us to do so. Take a very hard look at the work you are doing and be completely honest with yourself and ask, what would I be doing differently if I were more courageous? What does the planet, the ocean, need me to do? Given the state of the ocean, which, by the way, UNESCO just released the 2024 State of the Ocean report, I urge you all to read it. The headline of the report is, "The crisis the ocean is facing is advancing at a much faster rate than our knowledge of it." Just think about it and ask yourself, what can you do to be a part of the solution? Next, and not least, the last guiding principle I want to share is this. In everything that you do, create pathways to fund, support, and empower women. They say there is no silver bullet to fix the gender inequity, but I believe that the only way to enable us to have greater influence and for us to change the tide, pun intended, is to put capital in the hands of women. It is that simple. The more capital in the hands of women, the faster we will see changes in society. With that, I wish you all the happiest World Ocean Day. Thank you for having me. And if Sustainable Ocean Alliance can be a support system to you, please, please, please reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for your compelling and moving words. Being courageous is key, and put more capital in the hands of women. I look forward to following your journey and seeing young ocean leaders thrive. Next, we're going to kick off the programming with 2 back-to-back presentations, one on sea ice with Sally Ranney, founder of Global Choices, and the next on the polar vortex with Kate Morin, president and CEO at Oceans Network Canada. Let's bring Sally on.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for putting this together. I'm honored to be here. So the ice crisis is basically the cryosphere is melting on our watch. That's all the ice and snow on the planet. I wanted to set some context here before I get into the role of women in the Arctic. And so we have the poles are going extinct. And next, great, the vortex of the sea ice shield is the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world. We are in a situation where the ice is retreating, melting 13% per decade, and 54% of the albedo effect has been compromised. That is the reflection of the sun's heat and radiation. So the temperature for the 2100s, going to the 2100s, does not look good. Next. And the reason is because, think about this, 1 ton of emitted CO2 is 3 meters squared or 32 feet of sea ice melt. This takes you right into your kitchen, your closet, and what you choose for travel. Next, the Earth has 5 support systems, life support systems, and when one goes down, i.e. the cryosphere, it affects everything because everything is connected to everything. And that's why, next, we say what happens in the Arctic, next, doesn't stay in the Arctic. So you can expect there have been changes which are affecting the entire world. We have a wobbly, this is scientifically verified, to sea loss. We have a wobbly jet stream, and we have slowed ocean currents are just 2 of the examples. And so what do we get next? Is we get loss of crops, we get floods, we get wildfires, we get severe droughts, and also next, we have a disproportionate impact next on indigenous local in the Arctic. We have sea level rise. The Greenland ice sheet is now losing up to 40 tons of ice per hour, and we have extreme weather. But most interestingly is scientists have identified, next please, that the sea ice is a trigger for 9 other tipping points on the planet. So you would think, next, how valuable this is as a climate stabilizer and a planetary cooling system that we would protect it with kid gloves. However, there are those who are waiting for the ice to melt, the sea ice to melt, to take advantage of commercial opportunity. Next. So who stood up? Women. The stakes are too high for people and planet. Global Choices, my organization, is all women led and inspired. And what we did next is we went from scientific evidence to action and action to policy. Next, we have proposed a 10-year moratorium on harmful activities to the fragile ice and the biodiversity of the Central Arctic Ocean, which nobody owns. It's a high seas, because that's where the Arctic ice is now retreating. Next. So what does this actually mean? This is a science and social equity driven precautionary pause. And these are the harmful activities that this moratorium will put on hold for 10 years, just for 10 years, so policy and science can catch up. Innovative policy. Next. What is most important, or equally important, is that the Arctic sea ice is a metric to hold us to the Paris Accord because it is the system that is disintegrating the fastest. So is there hope? Absolutely. What we have done is created a global campaign called We Can't Plant Ice. Next. And the reason is that global leaders have avoided looking north much too long. And it's time. They are really treading on thin ice more than they realize. Next. And here's the interesting part. We are now in the dynamic of what is called an inflection point in history. And this is where women come in to be so important. There's a new paradigm trying to bust through of trust, gender equality, social change, all kinds of collaboration and profound interconnectionists. And the old paradigm, which is hate and war and fear, the status quo, is hanging on. It doesn't want to change. Next. So what do we need to do to go into what has to happen on the planet? It's transactional consciousness to transformative consciousness. And women are stepping up at this moment in time because they are taking an inner journey.
Oh, so thank you for that, Sally. I'll just describe one aspect of what Sally touched on, and that is the polar vortex. What you're seeing here is basically an animation of how sea ice loss allows more warming of the Arctic Ocean. And that's the fundamental aspect of the polar vortex. As Sally said, we are losing sea ice. That's the frozen surface of the ocean. And as we do that, there is actually heat still in the ocean that goes into the atmosphere. And when that happens, you actually get a reduction in the change of temperature between the poles and the mid-latitudes. When the polar vortex really keeps the actual cold up in the poles, but when you have warming coming out of the Arctic Ocean, you can actually stop the slides now because I think that Sally showed so many. I'm not sure my video is on though. Is there a way to turn that on, Michelle? Okay.
We'll just keep the slides on, Kate.
Okay. So just if you just keep going on the slides, then so that you can see the reduction in Arctic sea ice in this diagram, and then go to the next slide. And as Sally showed, what happens is when you have warming coming out of the ocean, that tight polar vortex, which keeps cold air in the North Pole, is broken down. And that means the polar vortex is broken down, and it brings cold air to the lower latitudes, and we get extreme weather events. Next slide. And that means when you see the weather channel, you'll see these what some people say is a polar vortex coming south, but it's really the breakdown of the polar vortex. Next slide. And I experienced this long ago when we saw that first one in 2010 in Washington, D.C. And that shut down Washington, D.C. for days and actually had an economic impact. And that's now been happening again and again and again. Next slide. And so what we're seeing now is this regular infusion of cold air, extreme events, based on the fact that we have a loss of sea ice. So as Sally said, the ocean, and especially the Arctic Ocean, impacts the rest of the planet. And the polar vortex breakdown is just one example. And I urge you all to begin to continue your climate action, particularly with the ocean, because it's the ocean that is controlling a lot of the events we're seeing today. Thank you very much for having me, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Sally and Kate, for your insightful presentations. It's really great to have a bit of a science class. It's probably been a while since all of us have been in a classroom. So next up, we have a panel, Deep Sea Mining, a serious, important, and timely topic. We have Wasser Seidel, who will be moderating, and panelists will include Laurel Chor and Jean Everett. Let's kick off with a short clip.
C. Access to minerals like cobalt is critical for the green transition because they're used to make things like batteries for electric vehicles and solar panels. Some people think mining different parts of the deep sea, all the way down to 21,000 feet below, holds a solution and profits. Hydrothermal vents spew out magma-heated water, leaving mineral deposits. Seamounts are sometimes covered with a cobalt-rich crust, which would have to be dug up. Finally, there are the abyssal plains, which cover half of the planet and are scattered with polymetallic nodules, ancient rocks made of minerals. Any type of mining would generate pollution from the light, noise, and wastewater, as well as create plumes of sediment. Scientists warn that we still don't know enough to make evidence-based decision-making on whether to proceed with mining. They say that most of the deep ocean is poorly characterized or understood or still completely unexplored, and that the consequences of the impacts of commercial mining remain unknown.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vassar Seidel, president of the Oxygen Project, and I've been a deep sea mining activist and campaigner for 5 years. Today, I will be your moderator. Thank you so much. So thank you, Laurel, for a little clip of your film. Can you please speak to, as a journalist, you have an opportunity to speak with industry executives and small island nation leaders. What have you learned?
It's really interesting to be able to speak to a wide variety of stakeholders. You know, we went to Norway, we went to the Cook Islands, we spoke to scientists and industry people who represent deep sea mining companies. And to be able to understand this topic on such a broad level, you know, this is an issue that affects everyone on the planet, right? Mining the deep sea, it's the entire ocean at stake. And as we've learned, you know, that affects everything. But I think the two things that really stood out to me was seeing how grassroots level efforts to advocate for the environment can make such a big difference, because the Cook Islands, which is pushing for deep sea mining, is only a nation, only about 18,000 people live there. So for them to go ahead with this, it's not a lot of people's opinions that are actually going to this decision making. And, you know, we followed the prime minister to go to one of their outlying islands that has literally a population of about 400 people. And he did this presentation to a few dozen people, and witnessing how a small island nation leader is trying to influence opinion, just, you know, a few dozen people at a time, and how powerful that can be for everyone on the planet, as in how influential, how that has such major stakes. And on the other hand, also seeing how powerful the industry can be in terms of pushing certain narratives that then become what is accepted as the status quo or is accepted as the norm. You know, certain narratives, which I know Jean will speak to, about whether we need these minerals, whether we need to mine the deep sea, and seeing also, frankly, how a lot of the media just accepted a lot of those narratives without necessarily questioning them, and falling, unfortunately, into sort of the same mistakes that the media had made with climate change, right? Presenting this idea that there's two sides to it, when actually there is a scientific consensus, and that is the fact, and that is who we need to listen to.
Thank you, Laurel. So John, yeah, what is the current situation?
Hi, everyone. Super happy to represent Blue Climate Initiative here. I'm a director for programs and operations for BCI. We've been working on this for a couple years, and things are moving very fast. Right now, the deep sea metals are available or can be, you know, exploited both in national waters and international waters. So there's some national countries that are moving ahead, as Laura mentioned. Norway and Cook Islands are really at the forefront of that. In terms of the international waters, we're talking about areas beyond national jurisdiction. The licensing there is covered or is governed by an organization called the International Seabed Authority that is headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica. They operate like the UN, but they do not report to the UN. They actually don't report to anyone. And they're very strongly lobbied by corporate companies, especially some of the key decision makers in the organization are very close to some of the corporate interests. They also kind of officially operate like a UN organization. There's 168 member states. The decision-making rules and voting rules of the organization are very unclear and have been difficult and aren't very representatives of the majority opinion and just the way that they're being done. So it's been problematic. And so what they are working on right now, they meet about 3 times a year. They've been working on developing a mining code in order to enable mining to happen. And this is where there's a challenge. Is they're both in charge of protecting the high seas, the high sea floors, I should say, but they're also in charge of issuing licenses. So it's really a case of the fox guarding the chicken coop. And they've been working on developing this mining code. However, one challenge is the science is not there in order to inform a mining code to be able to work effectively and regulate the industry effectively. So this mining code is far from being developed. However, some agents within the organization are still pushing and asserting, oh, this will be done within months, so we're almost there. However, I attended the last meetings in March, and there's still a lot of differences between member states, a lot of tension between some states who are pro-mining, others who are not. And every session, every single conversation becomes a topic of discussion. Right now, they're actually, as of today, a big announcement publicly. Greece has joined as the 26th member state to take a formal stand for either a ban, a moratorium, or a precautionary pause on deep sea mining. Some of the others are some major industrial states, both in Europe and Germany and France leading that. In Latin America, Costa Rica is leading the group. Canada is also in there. The US, unfortunately, has not taken a stand. So this is something that we're following very, very, very closely to see where the geopolitics of this evolves. And I'll leave it to that for now.
Thank you, John. To you both, what's at stake here?
Why don't you go ahead first on this one?
Okay, maybe, well, just in summary, there's definitely an environmental challenge. There's also a social and kind of a social license challenge on the environmental side. The way that the mining takes place right now, the most accessible form of nodules that were mentioned in the video is a polymetallic nodule. So they're, in some ways, you might say they're the less destructive because you don't have to break ground to access them. You have to vacuum them up. However, they are very deep. They're 4 kilometers under the sea. And in the extraction or the lifting of those nodules, a lot of plumes are lifted and generated, and those plumes can travel very far. The area that is being right now coveted is as large as it's called the Clarion-Clipperton zone. It's between Mexico and Hawaii, which is the most kind of most accessible area. Stretches basically equivalent of Los Angeles to Boston would be kind of the broad. So it's very spread out. A lot of ground would be worked and exploited for in the end very few minerals. We're looking at an additionality of 2% in the case of copper if everything was being exploited, compared to land mining. So not a whole lot of more value added. A lot of floor being and ecosystems being destroyed. Those plumes who are rich in heavy metals will travel far and will be absorbed by the food chain, by the fish, and it also affects the carbon pump of the ocean. As you know, as most of us know anyway, we can go into that. The ocean plays a huge part in sinking carbon. And then there's a social license as well, just very briefly, and I'll hand it over to Laurel. Indigenous leaders around the world have stood up. They have, especially coastal communities, indigenous groups in the Pacific in particular, have a strong connection to the deep sea. They really see it as a strong spiritual, they see it as their ancestors. They see it as the origin of life, which it is on Earth. And so going and destroying where we came from is completely unfathomable to them. So there's a petition. Leaders from 50 countries and 70 indigenous groups have stood up to say, no, we're not okay with this, and asking for a ban. There's also a huge difficulty in terms of how the benefit sharing would take place. If we were to license, this is the common heritage of mankind, how would the benefits be redistributed among the populations that this floor belongs to, the seafloor these resources belong to? And Laura, I don't know what else you'd have to add to that.
Yeah, and Johnny spoke about polymetallic nodules, but in Norway, the areas where they want to mine, they actually want to mine seamounts, and that involves breaking ground. And these are areas where there is a lot of biodiversity. As I'm sure you guys know, we don't know a whole lot about deep sea biodiversity. It's barely studied, and so we don't even know what we could potentially lose before this mining might happen. And the type of mining they want to do in the Arctic is a lot more destructive in theory than the type of mining they want to do in the Pacific. And there's so much machinery. We don't even know the type of technology that they want to use yet because it's still in its infancy. So there's just so many unknowns about how this could affect the oceans, the way oceans function, the way it might impact biodiversity. And I think for me as a journalist, seeing this, reporting on this and making this documentary, it sort of feels like humanity has an opportunity here to stop this potentially catastrophic new frontier of exploitation before it happens. It seems like a rare opportunity for us to stop something before it ever happens.
Mm-hmm. And just off of that, to the human naked eye, the CCZ looks maybe not biodiverse in our minds. It's actually one of the most biodiverse places on the entire planet, as well as the deep sea. So we don't know a lot, but we know it's the largest biome on the planet and the most biodiverse, fragile, and untouched ecosystem. So we only have a few more seconds. If you guys could just choose to answer one of the two questions. The industry is peddling a narrative that we need deep sea mining. Is it necessary? And two, what can we do?
Very quickly on the is it necessary? No, it is not. It used to be that batteries were heavily dependent on cobalt and nickel. In the last 4 years, we've seen a huge growth of types of batteries that do not need those. And right now, those batteries have captured as much as 67% of the Chinese market and 52% of the both EV and grid storage markets. So we no longer need cobalt and nickel. Those are no longer critical minerals for the green transition. I'll leave it to that.
And in terms of what we can do, a lot of these potential mining projects are happening in democratic countries. Use your voice. Even as consumers, you can use your voice. Let companies know that you don't want to buy products that contain minerals mined from the deep ocean. Just use your voice as a consumer, as a citizen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having us. And thank you, Women in Climate.
Thank you so much for our deep sea mining panelists. This is a very important topic and one that I hope folks will take offline as well to continue learning about. Next up, SIDS is a term that many of us may have never heard of. The term stands for Small Island Developing States, and to shed light on this topic, we'll be bringing Emily McGlone, Executive Director at Peaceboat US, and Natalia Lawin, Youth Ambassador with Peaceboat. Let's bring them on the stage.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you so much to Women in Climate and to all of our partners for being here. Had an incredible lineup of speakers, and it's an honor for me to also be an advisor for today's program. I'm accompanied by Natalia Lawin, our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador from Seychelles. And as Michelle mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about small island developing states and also some of our programs with our international organization, Peaceboat, where we're visiting many island nations as we travel around the world on board our ship, promoting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also our new program for the UN Ocean Decade, which I'll be introducing with you all today. So we can go to the next slide, and I'm just going to give a brief introduction, first of all, to some of the programs that we have on board. Here you can see the Peaceboat's global voyages, where we're visiting around 20 countries every 3 months, including many island nations. And there's always the goal to work together with our NGO partners and youth, especially on the ground in all of the countries that we visit. You can go to the next, please. And on the side of our ship, we have the SDGs logo. So everywhere we go, we're also raising awareness for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And in the ports, we have various programs working on ocean and climate action, doing mangrove reforestation, coral reef as well, study programs, beach cleanups, and many activities with our local partners. And that's also one of the reasons we're excited to have Natalia with us. We just did a program in the Seychelles. Natalia was part of our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador program, focused on SDG 14. You can go to the next one, please. And we have youth from all around the world gathering together with experts in the field. So Christiana Figueres is also one of the advisors to our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador Program and also Peaceboat's EcoShip project. So we'll be introducing a little bit about that as well, that we really believe we have to work towards decarbonization of maritime industry and working towards a more sustainable ship. So with our Youth for the SDGs program, we've been doing a lot of activities, especially around kelp study programs, having the youth on board, organizing workshops, and doing peer-to-peer learning. So this has been a capacity building program for young leaders to really gain the experiences they need to take forward to become youth activists, but also the future leaders of tomorrow. We can go to the next one, please. And part of this program that's really exciting for us is that we are working also on a citizen science program, doing water testing and looking at the pH, turbidity, temperature, and oxygen levels in the water. And then this data is shared with the United Nations Ocean Data and Information System, ODIS. So this program was endorsed by IOC UNESCO this year as part of the UN Ocean Decade. And we're really proud to have more youth joining us. We have our next program this summer, and we'll be continuing these programs all the way to 2030 and beyond. So we look forward to having a lot of you join us as well. And the future voyages of Peaceboat will be held on board the EcoShip. So we know that really, as I mentioned, decarbonization of maritime is very important. So working on actually promoting solar energy, wind energy, and having a more sustainable maritime industry. So we've been working towards decarbonization using the solar and wind power, but also looking at maybe hydrogen and finding a way to set an example for the future of maritime, because we believe also all ships should be eventually zero emission and working towards renewable energy futures. So this is our EcoShip project. You can go to the next slide, please. And on board the Peaceboat, we are hosting various events around stakeholder engagement. So together with our United Nations partners, for those of you in New York, we're also happy to invite you to join us as part of this celebration for Blue Innovation. We'll be digging a little bit deeper into these issues and hosting an event on board the ship on June 16th. And this brings me to Natalia Lawan from Seychelles, who's part of our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador Program. So I'll pass the mic over to Natalia. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Emily. Hi, my name is Natalia. I'm from Seychelles. I was one of the Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador leaders from SIDS on the program on board Peaceboat in 2019. So photographed here are the 8 Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassadors from 2019, along with the Peaceboat coordinator and the president of Malta. Next slide, please. Next slide, the slide about SIDS, please. So if you're wondering what SIDS are, so SIDS are small island developing states, and there are 39 SIDS across the globe in the Caribbean, the Pacific, the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and South China Seas. Altogether, SIDS account for 65 million people, and this is our home. Growing up in Seychelles, an island country that is 99% water and only 1% land, that is the total size of the Seychelles is the size of Germany. So 99% of Germany being Seychelles water territory accounts for the country. So growing up in Seychelles, living with the ocean is embedded in our culture. And although the geographical structure of our islands renders us highly susceptible to climate change and makes us a very fragile ecosystem, I would tell you that islanders are very far from fragile. In fact, islanders are a group of very resilient people, and we're continuously looking for ways to adapt to the impacts of climate change and ocean degradation in our countries, given that our countries rely heavily on ocean's resources. Next slide, please. So there should have been a slide before that, but I'll just keep on speaking, that's fine. So if anyone has worked with Peaceboat before, I think most of you would agree with me that Peaceboat is like being part of a family. So after the Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador program was over, my journey with Peaceboat continued, where I got the chance to voice out about the impacts of climate change in my country and the reality of being an islander in Seychelles and what this means for us as people on stages such as the UNFCCC COP26 and COP27, as well as recently the Ocean and Climate Youth the Ocean and Decade Conference in Barcelona, where we got to speak about how much representation matters and why voices of islanders should be present in the climate space so that people can hear our stories and hear about what we're doing to change the narrative and to mitigate climate change and ocean degradation. I could go on and on about this, but time is not in our favor. So thank you so much for your attention, and thank you. Right over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for being part of this program. Thank you, Michelle, and all the organizers of Women in Climate.
Thank you so much, Emily and Natalia. I am really glad and proud that we could bring this topic to the summit today. Next up, we have Vali Fomak, ecologist and CEO at Equinox Labs, dialing in from Laos to talk to us about community engagement. Let's bring Vali to the stage.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. My name is Vali and I'm from Equinox Laos, a social enterprise that work on the area of environmental conservation in Laos, a landlocked country in Southeast Asia. So some of you might have a question why someone from a landlocked country would be on this summit talking about ocean conservation. So the question actually leads me here to be on the stage and talk about our projects and how it might contribute as a part of the ocean conservation or nature conservation as a whole. So next, why should I care? Laos is a landlocked country. So this is actually a comment that we have received from a youth who saw a post about how plastic waste are killing the marine animals for about 1 million lives per year. Next, please. Can you remove the example of about the ocean and make it more relevant to us? This is also one of the comments from our colleagues from the governmental office in one of our plastic-free projects, because they think that having the examples of how the plastic waste are going to be ended up in the sea and how it's going to be affected the marine animals are not related to our life or what we are doing here in Laos. Next, please. What's happening in the sea and the marine animals are too far from our lives is the point of view of a trainee in one of our plastic-free projects that have shared with us. These reflect deeply how us, people who are living in the landlocked country, feel like the ocean conservation or whatever happening to the oceans and the sea is far from our life. It's something that is happening in another world, which is not the case. We all know about that. Please, next slide. And we have the Mekong River, which is the river that flows from the very north to the very south of the country, and it's actually called the blood of the nation. And the Mekong River is one of the 10 most polluted rivers that dump plastic waste to the oceans every year. And this also show us how we are very closely related to the ocean conservation. And this is also the message that we try to spread over our community for many years. Next, please. And that's why we try to work with all sectors. We engage with youth, involve them in making changes. We work with the young journalists in our platform called Econews Laos to voice out about environmental issues. And they also talk about like deep sea mining and how climate change is deeply related to the ocean conservation. And we also have the training programs, youth empowerment program, and some hand-on actions, activities such as the World Cleanup Day. Next, please. And we also make sure that everyone is included. We have projects in the rural areas of Laos, and we make sure to mention this to the people who are living in rural parts of Laos and also the young generation. You have to see their faces, like the children that they see, the short films and the animations that show the whales and sea turtles and how what we are doing in daily life could affect through the oceans and the marine lives. Next, please. And we also see the crucial of having the partnership with the government. We work with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment in capacity building for their personnel and also for the businesses, and also co-lead in the policy-making projects, especially on how to reduce single-use plastics in the governmental offices. Next, please. And we try to also have it, as a fun part as well. We make sure to engage in festivals such as the film festival, music festival, and many more cultural festivals in Laos to make sure that the young generation have heard about how what they are doing is going to be affected to the environment, especially the consumption of the single-use plastic and how they consume their products in their daily life. Next, please. And we also work with the private sectors. This is called the Plastic Free Laos label. We work with the businesses in the hospitality area, such as hotels, resorts, restaurants, and cafes, and help them to reduce single-use plastic by giving them trainings, technical advisories. Next, please. And we also make sure that they are doing great in, providing eco-friendly and plastic-free services to their clients, and that they are not going to make a negative impact to the environment by providing their services. Next, please. And the greater impact, I think, is that they are spreading this to their business partners, business competitors, their clients, that what they are doing is crucial for the community. And not only that, next please, we are also trying to bring innovative solution, such as this is one of our projects initiative that is going to be even enhanced this year. It's called Rent Your Cup. So if you visit Laos, make sure to rent your cup if you go to get any coffee. If you're not bringing your own cups, that you're not going to generate more plastic waste into the ocean. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Valley, for the incredible work that you are doing. For a landlocked country, you have many measures in place thanks to the work from the community. Next up, we have a conversation on the blue economy. Check out the poll to the right-hand side and tell us how many of you have heard of the blue economy. And to shed light on this growing industry, we have Ali Rose with Creo Syndicate, Karen Sack with Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, Celine Schultz with Narwhal Ventures, and Kate Danaher with S2G. Let's bring them onto the stage.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having us, Michelle. And I'm so excited to help moderate this powerhouse panel of changemaker women that I admire and respect in the ocean space. So I see people are filling out the, are you familiar with the blue economy, the sustainable regenerative blue economy, all of the above or none of the above? It's a great jumping off point to talk about what the blue economy means and what the sustainable blue economy is. Just as a preface, quickly, the blue economy, or some people say the ocean economy, involves all economic activities involving the oceans, which can also include oil and gas, shipping that uses bunker C fuel. When we talk about the sustainable blue economy, we're thinking about switching those over to sustainable activities. So instead of mismanaging fisheries, we're thinking about how to use those resources in a sustainable way. So I'd really like to jump right in then to a question to our panelists. Not many people think about the oceans as an investable place, but could you provide some information about what areas of the specific blue economy, sustainable blue economy, your organizations are focused on financing or attracting attention to, and what type of finance you deploy? So if we could start out with Karen, that would be great.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ali, and hello, everyone. It's lovely to be with these amazing ocean women today. So the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, or ORA, is an alliance of over 90 organizations from governments, multilateral institutions, insurance, banks, and civil society. And what we do is we try and drive investment into ocean and climate financing products in the Global South. mostly focused on nature and nature-based solutions so that we can build sustainable communities with a goal of deploying $500 million in investment by 2030 to build the resilience of 250 million climate vulnerable people in the global south.
Excellent. We can move on to Kate.
Great. Thanks, Allie. Hi, everyone. Kate Danaher. I'm a managing director at S2G Ventures, and we're based in the U.S., and we're a multi-stage venture to growth equity platform that invests across oceans, sustainable food and agriculture, and energy. So it's really a climate platform. And within the ocean strategy, we invest behind 4 themes. So we're really looking at the bottom line for everything for us is data. So we call that our ocean intelligence work, and that's the absolute necessity of collecting, aggregating, and creating insights out of data around the ocean. We also invest in blue protein, as well as decarbonization, both using the ocean as a carbon sink, as well as the decarbonization of ocean-bound industries, and then finally, blue biotechnology and new materials.
Awesome. And Celine, if you could jump in.
Yes, thank you so much. Very happy to be on the panel and to be surrounded by amazing women who all care about the ocean. I'm very sorry for my looks. It's Ocean Day. I just got on an island, and that's how I got from the boat. So I'm very sorry for this. So I'm co-founder of Now Well Ventures. You're too kind. So co-founder of Now Well Ventures. We are a Singaporean company, and we are launching a fund focused on the blue economy. We have 3 verticals, which are renewable energy, marine mobility, and ocean sustainable ecosystem, which for us means water quality, plastic alternatives, and aquatic food.
Great. Thank you so much, Celine. And we're going to go to I have some targeted questions for each of you. I'm sorry, I realize I'm going off screen a little bit. And we'll do a little bit of a round robin with those. So we'll start with Kate. Do you have any specific examples of the economic and environmental impact potential of investing in the sustainable blue economy, whether that's through case studies or through your strategy? It would be great to hear some of those.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think when a lot of people think oceans, it's different than, everyday people in the world experience a broken food system. A lot of people in the world experience the challenges of our energy grid, and not as many people day to day experience, at least yet, or they can't relate it to, like how our oceans are in serious decline. And so I think it's, there's a lot of ways in which if we're investing in something like the maritime shipping sector, there's a lot of co-benefits that go along with that. But I think that we need to even think more expansively so that everyday people who might not interact with the ocean can really understand how investing in the ocean solves much bigger global issues than just ocean related issues. So like, for example, seafood and protein. There are 3 billion people in this world who rely on seafood as their primary source of protein. Those same communities are often coastal communities, and they rely on the ocean as their primary place of work. So if we're able to better manage our fisheries, provide incentives through policy and investment and innovative business models around more sustainable fishing practices and management practices, then we are helping to solve a global hunger and poverty crisis. So that's just like one example of how we can think about investing in the ocean to solve big global issues, not just ocean issues. I mean, there's a litany of ocean issues that these investments also solve, but hopefully that helps people who aren't in oceans kind of think more broadly.
That's great. Thank you so much. And so Karen, what investment opportunities, you mentioned that Aura is very focused on financing nature and finding innovative solutions to help drive capital into nature solutions. So what are some investment opportunities that exist within the sustainable blue economy to support these nature/ocean restoration and protection opportunities that you're helping to create with Aura?
Yeah, so thanks, Ali, and I'm taken by the poll, which essentially had one vote for the sustainable and regenerative blue economy. And I know we're all hearing today about really what a kind of terrible state the ocean is in, and so we need to move beyond sustainability into regeneration. And nature is our biggest ally in that. And as we look at this, we really need to think about biodiversity and climate change kind of as two sides of the same coin. If we can increase and biodiversity and decrease the biodiversity crisis, we can actually help tackle some of the issues with climate change. So mitigation and adaptation, we need to deal with them together. And really, nature is our biggest ally in all of this. Nature has been engineering and innovating for millennia, adapting to change. And this is where we can drive investment into the type of nature-based solutions that can help us build that resilience and adaptation. So a coral reef, a thriving coral reef, can reduce the impact of a storm surge by up to 97%. Mangroves have what, kind of in the finance sector would call a quadruple bottom line. They reduce the amount of toxins that flow into the ocean. They sequester carbon. They are amazing resilience hedges. They basically natural seawalls. And they're also nurseries for incredible amounts of sea life. 500 meters of a mangrove can reduce wave height by 50 to 100%. So investing in nature makes sense in terms of addressing, the crises that we're facing on the planet, but they're also incredibly cost effective. So the UN has estimated that restoring coastal ecosystems could save the world around $360 billion over the next 15 years, which is why we believe that investing in nature is not just common sense, but also makes a lot of economic sense.
That is quite the compelling argument for it, which is always great to see. Thank you so much, Karen. And we'll shift over to Celine. What specific sectors within the sustainable blue economy do you feel requires the most additional funding, whether or not Narwhale Ventures is focusing on it, if it's one of your sector areas, or if it's a subsector that Narwhale Ventures doesn't focus on, but you feel like there just needs to be more philanthropic type of capital that way, or if you just identified something as an area we need to direct more capital towards.
Yeah, absolutely, Alia. I very much appreciate your question. So that's true. As a VC, we cannot invest in every amazing ocean startup that we see. So as you know, so in the economy, all startups do not fit the VC system. And that's also what we're trying to do at Narwhale Ventures to help more than only the projects and the entrepreneur that would fit the traditional VC system. To answer your question, or maybe I would like to say first that I very much agree with everything that was shared by Kate and Karen. And I very much appreciate so this event. So as you know, so the ocean is very much lacking funding and a lot of education towards investors or people who can have a positive role for the ocean is still needed. So that's great to have this kind of event and opportunity to speak about it together. So to answer your question, Ali, so I guess our aim, so at least from my perspective, would be really to invest in order to maximize the positive environmental and social impact. And to do so, leveraging the potential of the ocean is crucial. And to do this, so we need to strengthen the resilience of the ocean. As you might know, ocean is the planet's largest carbon sink. So we need to bring new sustainable technology to market, commercialize it, and make it international as fast as possible. So in terms of decarbonization for the maritime industry, it's a pivotal moment. As you might know, so 3% of the total global greenhouse gas emission comes from this industry. It has increased of 20% the past decade, and we need to reduce all these emissions to zero. So bunker fuel is definitely something we are trying to get rid of to replace it by carbon neutral fuels. Additionally, there is also some more sustainable propulsion systems. So it can be wind assisted propulsion, layer lubrication. Of course, there are also some solutions around onboard carbon capture. So all this is going to play a huge role in the coming years. But a lot of funding is needed for this in research and development, as well as the establishment of the infrastructure. So we see some new boats. So in another category, so smaller boats that are fully electric. Unfortunately, there is no infrastructure, and I see too little startups in that space. So if we want to sell more non-polluting boats, of course, we need the infrastructure, and this needs to be built, and startups have a role to play. So if we want to get to net zero, so we will need ocean CDR, carbon dioxide removal. And for this, we need a significant amount of private and public funding in the coming years. And so, as you might know, the ocean is storing an estimated 91% of the excess heat energy trapped in the Earth's climate system by excess greenhouse gas emissions. So ocean CDR technologies are aiming at enhancing the ocean's natural ability to absorb and store carbon dioxide. And this is mitigating both climate change and ocean acidification. Just to give maybe a bit of background to see where we stand today. So worldwide, the commission and installed DAC, direct air capture plants, have a capacity of 0.01 metric ton of CO2 per year. And per IEA, International Energy Agency, this capacity has to increase to 69 metric tons of CO2 per year in 2030, and to reach 621 metric tons of CO2 per year in 2050. So there is a lot that is going to be done in the coming years.
Great. Thank you so much, Celine. I want to just get to our last question before we wrap up. And quickly, all of finance that's going into investment, only 2% goes into climate. And of that 2%, 1% goes into the ocean. So I think that is a very important thing to highlight. So Karen, let's start out with you. What are the risks we face if we don't invest in the sustainable blue economy? And in a few words, one sentence or less, that's hard, I know.
No, honestly, everything is at risk. Food security, national security, migration, assets on land, and the 250 largest cities in the world that are coastal. Ocean CDR is important. The best, most cost-effective thing we can do right now is use nature as that CDR rather than waiting for technology to be ready. We just need to get ahead and do it.
Great. Kate, let's move on to you. Thank you so much, Karen.
I mean, like Karen said, literally everything is at risk. Our planet cannot survive unless our oceans survive. But to I guess extrapolate from the example I used earlier around seafood, we invest in a lot more than seafood, but I think again 3 billion people rely on it for their livelihood and to feed their families. We're overfishing. If we continue to overfish, there will be species collapse. So you think about the sardine market right now and all the other creatures in the sea that depend on sardines. If we continue to fish that, there'll be total ecosystem collapse. Pollution, if we continue to consume and dispose of plastic at the rate we are, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean in the not too distant future. I mean, within 10 years, possibly. And climate change, like as our oceans warm, as climate change gets worse, the ocean can hold less oxygen, and less oxygen. I mean, fish breathe oxygen just underwater. And so they won't be able to survive. So that's just, again, like one example of how, if we can't make a change, I mean, seafood as we know it is done for.
Perfect. Thank you. We're going to have to wrap up there, but thank you so much to our panelists and for everyone attending. I hope you got to learn a little more about the sustainable blue economy.
Thank you so much, Ali, for your expert moderation, and to our Blue on Economy panelists for shedding light on this important area. Next up, we have two back-to-back presentations, one on ocean data with Kat Bruce, founder of Nature Metrics, and the next on ocean acidity with Jessie Turner, director at the International Alliance to Combat Acidification. Let's bring Kat on.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join this amazing set of women in climate. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've got quite a task to talk about ocean data in 5 minutes, but let's give it a go. So I wanted to start off just by thinking about why do we need ocean data? And on a global scale, we know that oceans are these incredibly complex systems which have interactions and interdependencies between the physical, chemical, and biological elements. So we need to be able to consider those all together at a global scale so that we can really understand the knock-on effects that changes might have that happen in one part of the system. So to do that, we need to be able to generate data at scale across all of those areas, the biological, physical, and chemical, so that we can put them all together into really useful models. Then at the more local level, we need data in order to understand the impact of our activities to inform management and to optimize outcomes. We have to build accountability and trust, and we need to understand what works so that we can make efficient use of what is honestly still tiny amounts of funding in this space and a tiny amount of time that we have to get this right and actually turn things around for the ocean. So for us at Nature Metrics, data is about building trust, building accountability so that we can accelerate new finance into nature. Now, in terms of tools and technologies available, obviously there's a huge range of different tools. I'm going to touch on just a couple of them that are really sort of linked to the nature and the biological element of the ocean. So the first is environmental DNA, if we can get to the next slide, which is what we focus on at Nature Metrics. And this is an absolute game changer for monitoring biodiversity in the ocean at scale. Now, environmental DNA refers to the tiny traces of DNA that all organisms are shedding all of the time into the environment. It's like when you touch something, you leave a fingerprint that's got DNA. So the water in the ocean is like a soup of genetic material of the whole ecosystem. And we can sample that soup by pushing just a few liters of water through a really fine filter. And it's something that's so simple to do that literally a 5-year-old can do it. If you go to the next slide. So I've gone head to head with 5-year-olds, and you can't tell the difference between the data that comes from their filters and the data that comes from mine. So this gives us something we can put in the hands of anybody, anywhere in the world to generate high quality, high resolution biodiversity data. So when we filter the water, the DNA gets caught inside the filter, and then we can analyze that in our laboratories to identify the full range of species present. We can get data sets covering thousands of species from bacteria to blue whales, and then we can take those data sets and turn them into a whole suite of metrics that tell us how species and ecosystems are changing and responding. Now, the second piece of data that I want to touch on is sound data, and I think we can play a short recording from an Thanks. So what we heard there was the sound of a dolphin underwater. Sound is an incredibly powerful sense in the ocean. It can travel thousands of miles, much faster and much further than it can in the air and on land. And so sound is used really as a primary sense by species. It's used for everything from hunting and feeding to navigating, communicating, finding mates, etc. But of course, a lot of what we're doing in the oceans is also making noise. So when we do construction, our shipping, our military activity, it's all creating a lot of noise. And the effects of that are hugely disruptive and they're often not appreciated. So monitoring sound data in the ocean can really help us better manage that noise pollution while also providing data about marine biodiversity. The next slide. So I think what I find most exciting at the moment are initiatives that are bringing together all of these different types of data and really speaking to multiple stakeholders to try to tell stories about what's going on in the ocean and catalyze positive activity. So an example of this that I'm really close to at the moment is an initiative called GB Row Challenge, where engineers have modified 3 ocean rowing boats to be able to collect data on temperature, microplastics, sound, and environmental DNA. And every year, teams of slightly mad people row these boats right the way around Great Britain, collecting the data at really an unprecedented sort of density and rate. And it's building up the most incredible data set on what's going on in our oceans right around Great Britain. Next slide. So right now I am one of these crazy people, and on Sunday this week I'm going to be stepping into one of these boats along with 5 other women in climate, and we're going to row right the way around from Tower Bridge back to Tower Bridge, both gathering data and also telling the stories of all of the amazing work that is going on right around the coast of this island, already showing that nature has an amazing ability to bounce back given half a chance, and it's not too late, too hard, or too expensive to turn things around for the ocean. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's really good to be here officially for Women and Climate Summit celebrating World Oceans Day, and really wonderful to be part of the ongoing dialogue and be leading us now to talking a little bit about the impacts of ocean acidification. So my name is Jessie. I'm the director of something called the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification, which is a voluntary initiative made up of governments, from national to state to port, as well as tribal, First Nation, and municipal governments. And we were formed in 2016 to really help governments understand what they need to know about ocean acidification and climate ocean change, and some of the actions that they need to be able to respond to these impacts along their coastline. So next slide. I'll just quickly say as a primer, what is ocean acidification? Next slide. Ocean acidification is caused by increased CO2 emissions that are going into the atmosphere, but 30% of atmospheric CO2 emissions have been absorbed by the ocean, causing a 30% increase in ocean acidity since the Industrial Revolution. And what that means generally is that that changes the pH, as well as the chemical makeup of the ocean, and causes a decline in pH. And this is just one graph that I wanted to show you all here, because just like we talk about temperature or heat stripes, showing global temperature change caused by climate change, or marine heat caused by climate change, this is an OA stripe chart showing that decline in pH over time, in this case since 1983. And so we're really trying to find more ways to visualize for people what this decline in pH looks like, or to show that drop in a meaningful way. And of course, it's not just pH that we care about. In the next slide, we'll share that it's aragonite saturation. So why does pH matter? Well, pH matters because that changes, or is one indicator of something called aragonite saturation. And aragonite saturation is basically the measure of how much calcium carbonate is available in seawater for marine life to use to build their shells, exoskeletons, coral reef. And a decline in aragonite saturation is a huge problem for survival of marine life in our oceans and along our coasts. So next slide. And of course, it's not just ocean acidification. We also have been talking today that it's heat. So the ocean has absorbed 93% of excess heat caused by greenhouse gas emissions. And the combination of the heat and acidification has also contributed to oxygen loss and slowdown of our currents. And that has caused real significant impacts to the things that we've been talking about today, which are fisheries and aquaculture, food security, economies and livelihoods, and cultural practices and traditions. So next slide. And, as we've been speaking about today, there are real consequences of inaction. The last panel on the blue economy talked quite a bit about fisheries, and I really want to underscore that when we're talking about ocean acidification. So the IPCC tells us there's high confidence that ocean acidification, warming, and oxygen loss has already affected net productivity of the ocean, leading to distributions in food production, changes in distributions of seafood production. We are seeing threats to biodiversity, increasingly impacts to food webs, and even to finfish. And then we've also talked a lot about reduced growth rates and survivability of coral reef. And so all these things taken together really spell an emergency when we're talking about seafood security and impacts to seafood sovereignty moving forward. So next slide. So what is the Alliance working to do? I just want to leave my last 2 or 3 minutes to really describe what we can do about ocean acidification globally and locally. So at the international level, there's lots of frameworks for thinking about how we can reduce our CO2 emissions, but also guide a meaningful adaptation and resilience agenda for ocean acidification. So at the UNFCCC, we now have the Ocean and Climate Change Dialogue, and we're really working to make sure that mitigation and adaptation agendas adequately reflect ocean and coastal issues within that space. At the UN Sustainable Development Goal agendas, we have Goal 14, of course, which is the ocean goal, and Target Point 3, which is to minimize and address ocean acidification. And it calls upon governments to monitor and report ocean acidification so that we have a better sense in different regional scales what's happening in coastal waters and what that means for different regions and different governments and their reliance on keystone fisheries or keystone reef in their area. The UN Decade of Ocean Science has an ocean acidification research program that is really trying to identify OA information for management purpose. So what can, in addition to CO2 reduction efforts, what else can we be doing to build out knowledge for particular activities that guide things like blue carbon ecosystem restoration, reducing land-based stress that's accelerating coastal acidification, and even guiding our monitoring, verification, reporting needs for new things like marine carbon dioxide removal strategies. And then finally, the Our Ocean Conference provides a really great platform for governments to mobilize commitments to policy action and increased investments in this topic. Next slide. So at the domestic level, we're looking at that international framework, but at the domestic level, we're really trying to get governments to think about their own approach to national priorities around ocean acidification.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Over to you, Michelle.
What a great presentation on ocean acidification. I think it's one of the metrics that we don't really talk about, but are so key to every species on this planet thriving. So thank you, Jessie, for bringing us insights. Next up, we have a conversation on carbon dioxide removal, followed by a panel on fashion. So stay tuned. For our next poll, how many people have heard of the term carbon dioxide removal or marine CDR? There's a poll to the right there. And to expand on this topic and how it relates to the oceans, we have Sarah Beth Broccoli with Carbon Better, who will be our moderator. Our speakers include Sapir Marcus Alford with GigaBlue and Mallory Ringham with Ebb Carbon. Let's bring them on.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining today's panel on pretty much what is an exceptionally critical topic, carbon dioxide removal or CDR, but this one is with more of a focus on marine-based strategies. So I think towards what we've all been discussing today alongside different aspects and venture points is clarity. What is CDR and what isn't CDR? So simply put, carbon dioxide removal encompasses a large range of strategies and techniques designed to remove CO2 from the atmosphere and sequester it securely. This usually doesn't mean that we're offsetting emissions through practices like planting trees or improving soil health. Undoubtedly important in these spaces, but this specifically addresses a lot of the technologies that you see flashing across the screen here. Pieces that can actually remove and draw down existing atmospheric CO2. So why do we focus on oceans? Our oceans play a pivotal role in the Earth's carbon cycle. They're not only a major sink, absorbing about a quarter of CO2 that we emit, but they also have the potential for enhanced carbon storage through natural and engineered solutions. So with this context, let's dive a little bit deeper into the topics with our panelists today. We have two exciting solutions here, GigaBlue and Ebb Carbon. So the ocean is the next frontier for the carbon removal industry. I'd love to hear a little bit more about why marine and why the two of you are working in that space. So Sapir, if you could kick us off, and then we'll switch over to Mallory.
Sure. So I'll say, first of all, that the carbon cycle is the most significant maybe cycle on Earth, and it uses maybe every system that there is on Earth, every organic and inorganic thing that you know about, if it's regulating pH, temperature, build rocks, trees, human bodies, algae, everything. And I think this is the most maybe significant way we can contribute to doing something for climate and oceans. And it's the complementary act to reduce emissions, which is also very and super important to do, but we can't go forward without actually actively reducing CO2 concentration from ocean waters and atmosphere.
Yeah, I think that's probably a very succinct, personal message for why would you work in this space. And Mallory, coming in from Carbon's perspective, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, again, marine CDR, specifically separate from all types of land-based CDR.
Yeah, I'll agree with everything we just heard. And personally, I come from paleoclimate and then into carbon sensing methods, mostly that were developed for acidification sort of work and are now kind of being transitioned into the carbon removal industry in the ocean. I think the oceans are particularly exciting because we know that they work as a carbon storage solution. The oceans are the largest reservoir of carbon on Earth. So when we're talking about this massive scaling challenge of removing gigatons of carbon, and we need somewhere to put it, the oceans offer a variety of different ways that we can explore. And there's never going to be a single solution that works for the amount of carbon removal that we need to hit on top of emissions reductions that we need to also hit. But there's a number of different pathways that may work in different regions, in different parts of the ocean that we can really tailor to be place-based and effective. And the other piece that's fascinating about the ocean space is a lot of the different types of carbon removal pathways we're considering in the oceans are, particularly for nature-based pathways, things that we should be doing anyway, protecting ocean space, increasing storage in natural pathways, addressing pollution. And I think we're seeing more and more folks turning towards this perspective that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is pollution. And like we clean up other pollutants, we should be cleaning it up in the oceans as well as in the atmosphere, because the acidification problem is something that we have seen increasing over time. So it's an exciting space to work in for all of these different regions. And there's also the practicalities. The oceans offer a lot of space. So a lot of the terrestrial-based methods for carbon removal are in competition for energy, for location, for other things that we want to use that land for. And if we're clever about where we suit ocean pathways for carbon removal, we can maybe work around that to some extent.
And I usually hear that from other entities, scientists discussing this, that you can usually leverage biological processes and non-biological processes, so biotic and abiotic approaches. As you start thinking about the carbon cycle, can you unpack for the audience here what those two things might mean from the scientific space, but then also from the voter space, public sentiment, how we're thinking about that?
I go?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think because what Mallory also said, that the ocean has such a significant role in regulating CO2, and it is the largest carbon sink on Earth, and it uses also organic and inorganic forms of carbon and sinks. And when you look at the cycles of carbon in Earth, there are also fast and slow carbon cycles, and the ocean is the place that really couples those both. And you really have to breach on a really, really small gap, I think, in the ocean to be able to move between those fast and slow carbon cycles. And it leverages our ability to act in scale and affordably in order to mitigate climate goals, and also to meet climate goals, and to really help answering different challenges. I mean, CO2 is also increasing temperature, but also, as we heard before, creates acidification of the ocean, and those are like a crazy loop that feeds themselves, and just creating a feedback that can be worse and worse during the years. So I think when you bridge the gap, okay. Also in organic forms and also inorganic forms, such as alkalinity enhancement or electrochemical processes, or increasing natural system capacity, leveraging or biomimicking natural processes for example, biomaking the biological pump, increasing the efficiency of the export. So all that things uses really small amount of energy and can reach really gigaton scale and really game-changing solutions.
So I absolutely agree with both of you. And I think that that's some of the questions that we're all like bringing to the table now. And as companies start to begin to sell credits for marine carbon dioxide removal in a largely unregulated marketplace, scientists are having to develop standards for assessing the effectiveness of different removal methods. So Mallory, I know that you're dealing with this. Safer, I know you're dealing with this too. But I mean, what's the London Protocol? What types of MRV bound your decision making as scientists, and what do you have to really contend with each day?
Yeah, that's a really big question. I think a lot of the methods that we're talking about for carbon removal in the ocean are things that may be coastal just because of regulations in the near future. So the London Protocol prohibits dumping of pretty much most things into the ocean. And so older pathways for testing carbon removal pathways were as simple as dump iron off the back of a ship in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And so that's prevented outside of very specific research activities. And there are research activities coming up this summer and next year for things like alkalinity enhancement. We are adding something to the ocean in a way that mimics natural weathering products from the land surface to the ocean. But where it gets really tricky and complicated is when you talk about scaling, because there's a lot of research that we can do in the open ocean, in the coastal ocean, that's very small scale. But if we want to be relevant, we have to ensure that there's a pathway to do things realistic, that we have power, that we have all of the resources that we need, that we have commercial space to work in. And that usually means that industry gets involved. So this becomes a very complicated collaborative pathway between governments, industry, academics to understand what you can do and where you can do it. So in EB's case, we're an electrochemical alkalinity enhancement group, and effectively we're stripping acid out of seawater. And we need to do that in a coastal setting because that acid needs to go somewhere and we have to power ourselves. And the power right now is coming from renewable sources on land. And for our specific pilot sites, we are regulated in the US, where we're working by Environmental Protection Agency requirements that are then navigated by state agencies. So there's regulatory pathways that address how we put things into the ocean, but they're not meant for carbon removal. And that's something that gets really, really complicated over time. Is we are effectively regulated as polluters when we are attempting to change something about the ocean very deliberately. And those are at odds in the regulatory space, in the policy world, and in the scientific world as well. So there's a myriad of challenges that we need to work through to scale this from research to reality. And those address engineering challenges, they address policy, community engagement, all of these facets, and they need to happen now if we're going to figure out what does and doesn't work quickly.
And again, I want to make sure that there's enough time for like final remarks for you, Safer, as we're like transitioning out to Michelle. But any final nugget that we can leave behind from Data Blue's perspective?
Yeah, so I think first of all, the ocean has great potential to scale, but with great scale comes great responsibility. And we have to use it in a really smart way and being able to monitor everything we do in a very exact and evidence-based data. And maybe second thing is I really agree with Mallory, and I think maybe the one thing that can really help us all help Earth is to be more aligned between countries in different processes of permitting and have one standard permitting process to MCDR in order to be able to scale.
Well, thank you both for your quick thoughts today. I know it was a pithy panel, but it's certainly not enough time to address the expanse of the ocean opportunities that exist in CDR. Michelle, I'll throw it back over to you.
Thank you, Sarah Beth, and thank you to all of our panelists. It's definitely a challenge for such a big topic for 10 minutes, but you did great, and I hope that the audience will take some nuggets and continue learning. Now for the moment I've been excited about from the very beginning, a conversation on fashion with Runa Ray, who has designed for guests from the Met Gala to the Grammys, and Marie Roos with Positive Fibers, a conversation moderated by Marine Salib Pied-Noir with Sea Legacy. Let's bring them on stage.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you to the entire team who organized this event. It's a real pleasure to be with Maria and Runa on that panel. So I know that both of you did not start your career in fashion advocacy. Could you please share a little bit of your journey and story?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think this is a fantastic panel to have women and climate. And I thank everyone who's being a part of this. I'm Runa Ray. I'm a fashion environmentalist. And you are right, I did not start off as an activist. But we know that fashion keeps within itself the core of creativity. And at the same time, fashion is responsible for social and environmental justice. So when I came into the fashion industry, there were the three C's that really got me thinking. One was curiosity, the other one was compassion, and the third one was change. Because it's only with these three C's that we can actually make or create the kind of effect that we would like to see in the world. And this was probably my first advent into becoming an activist, which I see my designs going forward and trying to get science involved into the pop culture. Thank you so much, Mari, for the wonderful question.
Yeah, hi everyone. So excited to be here as well. Michelle, thank you for, I know it's been a massive organization behind this, so well done. Just wanted to call that out. Yeah, I also do not come from the fashion industry at all. I'm an economist, so I'm a bit of an industry invader. But the reality is, I thought I wanted to be a management consultant, and then I saw a documentary called The True Cost, and as cheesy as it sounds, that totally changed my life because I realized how how exploitative the fashion industry is. And mind you, it's not just fast fashion. Luxury is equally part of the problem. So I started to investigate why are we in this mess, and also how do we get out of it? Because guess what? You always have a choice, right? And for me, it was, do I want to continue to be a part of the pollution or of the solution? And I chose the latter. Became an independent researcher, and finally realized there's a lack of there's not the brand that I want to see in the market, and this is why I founded Positive Fibers, which is an ocean positive fashion label and an early stage tech startup. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Maria, if we keep on that topic, could you please share with us some info and facts on fashion and how it impacts the ocean?
Yeah, of course. So I always like to start off with stating that fashion is not as frivolous as we might think it is. I think that fashion actually relates to hardcore science. So we heard a lot about ocean acidification, right, being a massive problem. And one of the causes contributing to ocean acidification are landfills. And landfills are filled with textile waste, be it both from brands who could not sell certain textiles or clothes, so it's pre-consumer waste, as well as post-consumer waste. Now, the problem with this is that many of these materials, the fibers that go into the clothes, and also, I'm wearing a hot pink blazer. This is not natural, right? My blazer is linen, but linen doesn't grow in pink. So it comes from somewhere, and this is actually, it's all artificial and synthetic. And so going back to the topic of what ends up in these landfills, it's a lot of it is synthetic materials that do not decompose. Everything is biodegradable, but the problem is that some materials will last for eras, if not even longer. So and then the problem with that is not only that we have microplastics coming into yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's keep on the PFAS slide for a second, please. Yeah. So there's microplastics that go into the air we breathe, the water we drink, and into our oceans. And marine life doesn't really appreciate this, right? Because it's not part of their diet. So that's a problem. But it really, it's really evident how greenhouse gas emissions, so be that CO2 emissions, methane, what have you, like carbon dioxide, methane, etc. Sorry, I'm not a don't know all the greenhouse gas emissions, but it's a massive contributor to it, because these clothes, these textiles, these materials just sit there doing nothing except for polluting the environment. And so going back to synthetic elements into into the production of clothes. One of them is PFAS. So PFAS is popularly known as the forever chemical because it stays in our lives forever. I mean, there are solutions like not skilled yet that are finally trying to tackle this issue, but PFAS is a chemical that is used in the fashion industry to make our clothes, for example, stain repellent, and which on one hand is great, right? Because imagine you're wearing a dress or a shirt, what have you, and you're at an event, and I don't know, like a glass of red wine spills on you or something, right? Amazing to have that not sit on your clothes, but actually drop off. But it comes at an environmental cost and a health cost. So, quote Britney Spears, "Don't you know that you're toxic?" Because this chemical actually has also been linked to disrupting our hormonal balances, and there's so much like personal health, like public health and environmental health, that is negatively being affected by it. So something really has to change. Yeah, and I mean, so if we go to the, like let's go to the coral reefs, which are the lungs of the ocean, and life on land depends on life on Earth, but sorry, life in the ocean. Yeah, life in the oceans depend on life on land. And so if we go back to the manufacturing process where there's a lot of water wasted, but there's also so many like toxic chemicals being introduced in the process of treating certain textiles, right? So, but eventually this all gets dumped into our waters and into our oceans. And that just trickles down to, it's just basic gravity. Like, where does it end up? Eventually, it just pollutes the marine system, and it harms the homes of, these guys, of seahorses, for example. So something really has to stop. And that's why I founded Positive Fibers, to really rethink what we put into our clothes, and actually make fashion a force for good. So I feel like I've said enough. I mean, I can go on forever, but
Thank you.
Let's give the floor to Runa Ray.
No, it's very interesting. Thank you so much. And I think people can have a look at Positive Fiber after. So Runa, I've been super impressed to see that you've participated to prestigious events like the Met or the Festival de Cannes. I would love, and I think we would all love to see some of your work, please.
Well, thank you, Mary. For me, the Met Gala was a place where people could see beyond beautiful clothes, right? So I took it as an opportunity when Stephen Kolb, who was the CEO of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, got in touch with me. And the first thing I asked him was, Stephen, what do you have in your wardrobe? What can I use? And he said, you know what? I have this really old tux that I haven't used for 10 years. I was like, perfect, give it to me. And I got in touch with Swarovski and I asked them, do you have any crystals which are rejected that you don't use? And Swarovski was like, oh, we do have a bunch of them. I was like, give it to me, because I was their mentor. I took the Swarovski crystals, I took Stephen's tuxedo, and I asked him my final question. I was like, what's your favorite book? And he said he likes Khalil Gibran. I said, which is your favorite chapter? And he said it was a chapter on giving. And giving is all to do with the Met Gala, right? So I transferred the entire chapter of giving into Braille. So what you're seeing right now is the Braille of the chapter of giving. The next slide, please. And I put it onto his tuxedo. So when he went into the Met, people actually looked at him and said, oh my God, Stephen, you look ravishing. You look beautiful. It's a lovely dinner jacket, but they did not see the message beyond it. Next slide, please. And this is exactly what we do in the fashion industry, right? We wear beautiful things, but we do not see the lives of those that we make ugly. And that's me as an activist going on there and putting it out onto a global stage. Next slide, please. So working with celebrities, especially at the Met and the Grammys, I started working with coastal communities and trying to bring their stories onto a more global stage. Over here, you see garments that are printed using seaweed. And I've also created a documentary with the Prince Albert Foundation that speaks about how seaweed actually can be used in printing in the real indigenous way where we don't have middlemen. The next slide, please. We've been speaking about sound pollution, And I've heard everyone speak about sound pollution. So here we see a dress which is made of cork being one of the oldest fabrics that have been used in the shipping industry. And what you see here is actually the sound graph of a healthy coral reef that I worked with scientists in Monaco to take forward. The next slide, please. Yeah, and this is some of my work on the international platforms of New York Fashion Week and the Monaco Ocean Week. So yeah, this is, I hope it kind of sums up things that I do, and there's a lot more, but we can take another time to speak about that.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we all want one of those dresses. So I'm conscious of time. So I will invite Maria to drop maybe in the chat info about Positive Fiber. And Runa, I know you're working on great projects to come. I can see one on the slide. So feel free to also mention it in the chat. Thank you so much to both of you. Super inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you.
Up to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Marie-Céline, and all of the panelists. It is a late hour for Marie-Céline, and she expertly moderated the panel. We are so grateful. What an incredible and productive 1.5 hours. Thank you so much for joining us today and sticking around. To our incredible speakers, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been definitely a learning process, and we really appreciate everyone's patience, from the attendees to the speakers. And want to thank our producers, Natasha and Kelsey, Maria Tucker, who engaged with our attendees in the chat, the volunteers from the community who helped us practice and pitched in so many ways, and the organizations that helped us elevate and raise awareness on the event. It is really clear that there's work to be done, but it's even more clear that we have strong leadership in place to pave the way. The oceans need our support, and as individuals and as part of corporations, we have the tools. So let's hit the acceleration pedal for ocean repair and protection. It has been an honor to be your host today. We hope to see some of you in our speaker database, and if you're in a position to contribute, Women in Climate is a 501c3 nonprofit. There's a bottom at the button to help contribute. Your support to our volunteer organization goes a long way. Thank you, and see you again soon.